Welcome back to Magnetic. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just build brands, he helps turn them into movements. Will Mayer is a creative director and strategist who's played a pivotal role in shaping some of the most culturally resonant brands of the last decade, from Equinox to Airbnb and beyond. He's built a career at the intersection of fashion, storytelling, and identity, helping companies not just look good, but truly mean something. Will is a true disruptor in this space, known for helping brands cultivate cult like followings by staying deeply tapped into culture, community, and creative conviction. Whether he's launching new platforms or reimagining legacy brands, his work is always rooted in a deep understanding of what makes people care. In this episode, we unpack how to build brand energy, why clarity beats complexity, and what it takes to create something people don't just buy, but truly believe in. Will Mayer, welcome to Magnetic. Let's get into it. There's this concept that keeps sticking out as I think about the brands I love and the brands we work with. And fortunately or unfortunately, I get to see a lot of brands operate in both realms.
Yeah.
Generator brands, which I just name them, which is the opposite framework,
Mhm.
where you need a power source and you need to like continue to push, push, push.
Yeah.
And then, magnetic brands, whether you're a person or a physical product,
Mhm.
where if you just show up in the way that you're supposed to and what you're really good at and you just embody it, then eventually you just start attracting the right people
I love it, man.
and the right consumers, whether you're
Yeah.
a person or a brand again. So, but you've obviously worked in a ton of super culturally relevant brands. And I think from as little as I know about you, which we'll learn a lot more
Yeah, of
today,
course.
you've been at the precipice and like inflection points of some really cool cultural movements, whether in the brand space, culture space,
Yeah.
art space, have kind of put that together through creative direction, being a director and now, someone who's multifaceted today. If you pull all that back, when was the first time you really felt pulled towards this industry?
I've had many different phases through like the industry, how you want to define it.
Yeah.
For me, it started mostly through like action sports at a young age. So like I grew up skateboarding,
Yeah.
surfing, all that stuff, and like in skate culture, brands are so strong and relevant,
Yeah.
and you have like a cult like allegiance to certain brands growing up, where like you worship anything they put out, you like get every magazine, you consume all the media, you buy all the merch, like
Yeah.
you live the lifestyle to its fullest. I found the industry through making skate films. Like as a teenager, I
Really?
would like film my friends skating whenever I was injured, and then that just kind of led from one thing to another.
That was such a big cultural scene. I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
wearing those thick, I didn't even skate, but I would want to fit in all the time. Those thick, tongued
Of
shoes.
course. Yeah, the etnies or
ADO?
whatever.
A
Yeah,
audio?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
ADO. Yeah, that's
Those,
wow.
I
What
think
a
they're gone
throwback.
now. All those brands are like,
Yeah.
rest in peace, but yeah.
So that was as a kid, teenager, or what was
Yeah,
that?
that
That
was,
was
like age 10 on, let's say, and when I started shooting a lot of skate films, and I ended up getting hired by Vans when I was, like, 14. So I started shooting, like, skateboard films, concerts, shot Warped Tour with them when I was, like, in my
sick.
teens, and then throughout all of high school, I would basically, like, Friday would hit, I'd fly out to, like, a r random city, go shoot with, like, skaters or surfers or snowboarders, and then, like, fly back and go back to high school.
So you were filming action sports
Yeah,
essentially.
that was, like, how I kinda cut my teeth in the space,
Yeah.
and that was right around the time that there was this, like, huge movement for authenticity and, like, docu-style filmmaking, so I ended up getting signed as a director when I was, like, 18 years old, did a bunch of big Nike commercials in my, like, teens, and kinda rode that wave for a while.
Yeah. So what happens after that wave kind of comes down? What do you transition that into?
Yeah,
Were you a freelancer this whole time?
I had a
Or were you
production
working
company, I
for
was
Nike?
signed to
Okay.
production company, so I, like, directed through, like, every major US agency, basically. I would, like I was traveling 9 months a year on the road, directing, like, car commercials overseas, all of that, and I remember I was in Prague once, and I was, like, sitting having dinner with, like, a pretty notable director, and I was like, "Oh, dude, your life's awesome," and he was like, "Dude, I haven't seen my kids in 6 weeks. This is miserable. I'm stuck in Prague doing, like, a beer commercial to pay
Yeah.
bills, and, like, I just wanna be back in London," and I quickly realized that, like, all of the people I looked up to in that space were like on their second or third marriage and like didn't have a home life.
Wow.
And right around that time, like weeks later, I was on a shoot for Nike and they asked me to like help build an agency to kind of work with them closer. So I transitioned a little bit away from film into larger holistic storytelling on the brand side.
Dude, that moment of awareness is so important. Like the moment around like talking to someone who's been through it all and
Oh yeah.
they give you that life advice and not even he probably didn't give you that advice, you probably just observed it.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, I don't wanna be like that.
Yeah. You have to learn from like the mistakes of others in many ways
Yeah.
and do the best you can there.
Holy
So
shit. Coming back from Prague, I studied in Prague, so I love that.
Oh, no
For
way.
yeah, at NYU, it was,
Yeah.
study abroad
Yeah,
program in
your
Prague.
career, I feel like, has evolved a lot throughout the years, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's in a similar facet, which we'll get into later,
Yeah.
but, so you came back from Prague, started more on the agency side versus individual contribution around, like, going and
Yeah.
directing and taking it on full on.
Yeah, I cared more about the
So you
larger, like, whole
delegated more?
process. Exactly.
Okay,
I'd say delegated more, but also had more of a role in shaping the overall brand narrative rather than just, like, this singular campaign or this moment.
yeah.
I cared more about the larger evolution of how a brand came to life, lived, and evolved. So we started an agency, my, like, recent girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, Alyssa, and I, called Better Half.
Oh, that's
That,
amazing.
like, within
Yeah,
a few months, we signed, like, deals with Disney, Netflix, like, tons of huge companies that we had both known, and it just kinda, like, took off from there.
and that's what you still work on today? Is this putting us back to present day,
It's
or
it's evolved quite heavily.
okay,
We still have it, and it's part of, like, an overall system we've built, but since then, we've taken many, like, detours and kind of
yeah.
off ramps throughout the journey.
And what's your primary focus today? Is it better half, or how do you think about what you do today?
Well,
How do you describe it?
I would say the most recently, we're in the business of building cults. So, like, cults and new religious movements would be how I would
Mm,
describe it. So we have
that's
a
bold.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We have a company
Yeah.
called Cult Holdings,
Okay.
and that's, like, the larger umbrella. But I think we realized when we had the agency, we were creating, like, hundreds of millions of dollars of value for the brands we were working with, but we had no upside in that.
Mm,
So a lot of agencies start, I feel like, with small niche brands and then evolve and, like, one day try to get bigger
work with the big
clients.
clients.
We
Yeah.
kind of did the opposite route. So we had a ton of really great big clients from the start who we still work with today. But about, like, 4 years ago, we started either investing or taking equity for services.
Yeah.
So
Love
one of the
that.
first companies we did that with was a credit card company called Built Rewards.
Familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
I know
like,
those
Encore
guys.
was a good
Yeah.
friend. He reached out to us before it had ever launched. We joined as, like, advisors and partners to really help them run the marketing brand side of things, and then have since seen that team grow from, like, 4 people to it's probably about to cross 200,
Yeah.
3.5 billion valuation. Like, it's insane.
Yeah. And I think that's a smart pivot. And for other people listening, like our business has been very similar. We have our large conglomerate brands that want to disrupt within their walls because
Totally.
they're older, they're more traditional, they're bigger, but they want to be like the little guys. Those are fun clients.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun to go in and
100%.
disrupt because you can go in with that mentality of breaking down walls that exist already. But to your point, if you really want to just almost from a business side and personal growth side, taking a bet on these smaller ones, if you have the correct intuition,
Yeah.
and that's the important piece that, you can't just go around taking bets on small ones if you have no intuition around it. But if you have the intuition or the core character traits of something that's going to be a cult, maybe to your point, is that's when you're like, hell yeah, let me take sweat equity or let me get more involved in this, advisor equity, whatever,
Yeah.
equity for services.
Yeah, and the market will really quickly tell you if your gut is wrong.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
as I'm sure you've probably
Yes,
experienced at times.
absolutely. Plenty of times. How do you define cult?
There's many definitions of it. I would say how I would define cult is a group of people who are fiercely close to a shared ideology that are united by a feeling of difference between them and the outside world, and bound by shared rituals, symbols, or immensely strong identity. Basically,
Mm. Can you run through an example of a brand that
I mean, there's
embodies
tons.
that, like, that you're excited about or that maybe
Yeah,
you work with or just an aspirational cult brand?
totally. I think the most, like, when you think of cult brand, the ones that come to mind, which are most cliche, are like Apple or Tesla, like charismatic leader, strong us versus them mentality,
Yeah.
and, like, the brand itself becomes more of an ideology or lifestyle. And what's actually interesting is, like, the history of how brand evolved. It might be worth noting on this.
Yeah, please.
Brands
Yeah.
started as, like, branding cattle, like a sign of ownership. So brand marks. There was a potter, Josiah Wedgwood, who was the first person to put a brand on an item and sell it in a marketplace to show that it was his versus somebody else's. This is, like, back in the 1700s.
Wow. I did
From
not even know that. I should know this. I'm, like, in this world. That's the story? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Okay.
that was, like, the birth of the brand mark in some ways. From there, it evolved to what a lot of people coin as trust marks. So after time,
Mm.
think of slogans like "Nobody gets fired for buying IBM." Like, brands after a certain time had reliability and trust to their name,
Mm.
so it was a sense of a relationship there. Moving into, like, maybe the 80s and 90s, that kind of gave birth to what a lot of people called love marks, which are, like, brands that drove irrational consumption. So, like, the relationship some people have with Target, where it's like just they love the brand, so they want to go and support it and frequent it
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
You've seen that, I'm sure.
Yep. The
Uh,
Tarjay mom.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, the Target
Yeah.
mom. And then like the early 2000s in many ways was like the culture of identity marks. So like the simple one to think of is Supreme. Like I wear this logo so it says I am this person. And I think what we've gotten to in the last few years, and this is kind of what gave birth to the whole pivot we've taken, is that the future of brand is community marks.
Community marks.
So think
Yeah.
of it like every single brand has a run club.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking for a way to connect with others.
Yeah.
There's a famous Nietzsche quote of God is dead, God remains dead, and we've killed him. And it speaks to the point of the fact that right now in modern society, we don't really worship in the ways we used to. We
Yeah.
lost community and congregation. So the modern form of that in many ways is brand.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, we're talking about this on another episode where this form of community in a non-digital world used to be, yeah, your local church, your, I think we were talking about like Boy Scouts or whatever.
Totally.
It's just these, or teams of sports even, which typically still I think exists today with run clubs and things like that. But this sort of IRL community experience that was just so easy to integrate yourself. It's so natural. Like you would just grow up in a community on a cul-de-sac and you just have your people and but now we're so digitally connected and that's a really good transition into, I'd love your take on is it becoming harder or easier to create these communities with a brand? Because now there's just so much information, so many pulls. Like how many things can I be a part of and really advocate for? Right? And it's this discussion of, like, the psychology of the consumer, like, how like, yeah, can I really back my soda brand, my gym, my workplace,
Yeah.
my personal passion, the car I drive, like you said, Tesla, Apple, all these things. How do you think about that when you're working with a brand on how much like, the reality of how much attention they can really grab from a consumer?
I think when you think of like major pivotal points throughout history and religion, like Christianity spread in so many ways due to the printing press.
Yeah.
And now you have social media, you have LLMs. It's like the next religion will be a large language model. And for brands, I think there's never been an easier time to get attention,
Mm.
but it's never been as competitive as it is today. So you'd say. So
Yeah.
it's like you're seeing a lot of brands, I think, like reach a state of entropy really quickly, where they build momentum and then really quickly start to die and decay, much faster than you used to, which were these like more grassroots movements back in the day.
Are people leaning on you to help them think about and whether it's through content or, whatever your best stats are, which I'd love to get into in a bit, how are people leaning on you to create maybe more longevity in those brands? Because it sounds like they can deteriorate really quickly if you're not doing things to prop them up foundationally.
Yeah. I would say it's like I always like to start with like kind of a doctrine or like belief system for a brand. So many of the brands I've worked with in the past, like I led creative and brand for Equinox for like 3 years, worked with many other large brands, and a lot of them keep their like brand book and kind of strategy very internal and never share it with consumers.
Hmm.
And my whole logic is like, no, get that stuff out there, man. Like let people like preach on your behalf and let them feel like they're part of that. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of the like DTC or consumer brands that are taking off right now have these like obsessive loyal fans
Oh, yeah.
that live or die by the product.
Yeah. Especially in these like wellness communities now.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the whole like longevity movement. You said you were talking to John Leary earlier. Like
Yeah.
John's a really close friend, and what he's managed to do through the idea of social wellness
Yep.
and community is just incredible.
Yeah. Equinox, what did walk me through what you did for Equinox. I think that's really interesting. You helped their last big campaign, right?
So
Or
Equinox was a client of ours
yeah.
since like 20. They were one of our first agency clients. We did like digital social for them. We helped them build a product, a bunch of work, and then
Yeah.
it was around like late 2020 that Chairman Harvey had come to me and asked for me to join in house and build out a team internal. After a few conversations, I realized the opportunity was great. Work with him directly and like basically take one of, in my opinion, one of my favorite brands in history and like really lean into it. So I joined there in December. It was the first time I've ever had like a W-2. Like I never worked for anybody
Yeah.
before like
Yeah.
that. And we brought all creative in house. We built out an incredible team, and like that was basically their like the bottom from COVID for them member count wise. And then our goal for those 3 years were to rebound them and rebuild the brand into more of a luxury symbol. It had
Yeah.
kind of started to feel a little bit fitness and generic in some ways. And we leaned into working with some of the top fashion photographers, people in luxury to really give the brand a core foundation it could stand on.
What was that, what's the new slogan that you guys put in? Or what was the, thing that I've seen on all the
This
billboards?
this
It's
year, so I wasn't a part of this year's one. It's commit to something,
oh, commit to something, that's right.
which is
Yeah,
an
yeah.
incredible line. Wyden and Kennedy came up with that line like 2017, I think. It's one of the best lines they have, but they have "It's not fitness, it's life" as a core brand
That's what
tagline.
I was thinking about.
Yeah,
Yes,
so that's
fitness
been
is
their
life.
tagline for
Yeah,
maybe 20 years now, and
yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah,
But we did, I mean, it's been known to be a provocative brand, and we did some of the most provocative campaigns
yeah,
they've ever seen, which is no small feat.
yeah. That's amazing. As you think about taking on new brands, what excites you more? Just these you're saying these smaller brands that are starting to build a cult, and you come in and help them foundationalize how to do that. Is that sort of the work that you're currently doing?
It's a mixture of
Yeah,
that. I would say a lot of the work we're doing, the inbound right now, is that type of work where brands are coming to us, asking us to basically help them build a movement or cult. Uh, there's also a subsect where we're actually like creating ideas from scratch and incubating them and
yeah.
bringing on operators to pair with us and scale from there.
What's the first thing you look for? Like if I'm coming to you and saying like, "Hey, Will, like I have the money. Like this is my brand. I can afford you, whatever. Why take me on?" And are there like is there a first thing that you think about like is a yes or no based on that? Because you're gonna need to prove out success
Yeah.
based on what you guys do.
It's funny, we've actually, like, talked about this a lot as a team, and my goal this year is to make it really hard to hire us. So, like,
Yeah.
you'll literally have to join our cult, you'll have to do a full personality
Jeez.
test. Oh, yeah, we're making it, like I wanna cut out a lot of the projects that we've seen that really didn't reach their full potential were due to a few common themes.
Yeah,
Uh,
can you
totally,
explain what
yeah.
those themes are?
I'd say, I mean, the most
It's good
important.
missteps for a lot of brands probably watching or founders, like,
Yeah.
what are those missteps? What are those themes that you've seen occur?
I'd say the most important thing, and like seeing this with Encore and Built, is like persistence of vision. Like having a founder who's a charismatic leader and has a really strong point of view that they will not abandon in many ways is by far the most important thing. We've all worked, I'm sure you've worked with founders that every week it's something new and they
Mhm.
keep chasing the next and latest thing. And those companies never seem to become anything. It's usually the
Mm.
people who will like stick through a trend cycle and keep pushing. Those are the brands we've seen have the most success.
Mm. And the ones that maybe haven't reached their potential, is it just the opposite where they were bouncing left and right, or are there other things that
I mean, there's
prevent them?
always there's always other things. It's like I think what we've seen a lot is larger brands losing market share due to a few reasons. One of which being like a fear of being provocative or to really fight for anything or stand for anything. Brands became very like I'd say they like rounded off their edges and lost the teeth they used to have.
Mm.
And then you also look at like this new era of like influencer founder run brands that are like Feastables disrupting Hershey's or like Kylie Cosmetics disrupting Maybelline. And you have this huge push of like founder run brands that have a point of view and have messaging going against the like larger conglomerates that really are just there and
Yeah.
static. So
In your opinion, how important is it for the founder to have, an audience, a built-in community? You mentioned some, like, celebrities,
totally.
right? So that's a great topic. Like, is that a necessary pillar?
I wouldn't
And
say so. No, I'd say as long as the founder has a really firm point of view and can lead their team in a charismatic way, that's what's most important. We see celebrity run brands die every week. Like
yeah,
it's not enough.
yeah.
Um, I think
Why do
there's
you think it's not enough? Because I feel like so many people just jump like, they have the community, they have the fan base, they have the numbers. How do you think through the core ingredients of cult creation,
I
the
think like
recipe?
a
In a
good
way?
founder in many ways, again, like drawing parallels to a cult leader, isn't selling a product. They're selling like an ideology, a system of belonging, power,
It's
identity,
all those
love, community.
bigger things,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's like when you look at it, like I think the founder, in my opinion, that's done the model really well of like a like founder content and founder run brand is George Heaton from Represent 247.
Mm,
Like George has done such a good job at like building the brand on YouTube, hosting run clubs. And now I'm watching like this whole generation of founders, especially in like the wellness fitness space coming after him, like copying that playbook to a T. So I do feel it's not necessary in many ways to have that. There's so many incredible companies today that have founders that probably aren't really the most important thing in their brand story system.
yeah,
But I would say that the ones that are accelerating at the fastest rate right now do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then your team, how do they complement that founder visually and creatively?
Yeah. So
Because
hit,
I'm actually really curious, and feel free to spend more time on diving into this. Like,
yeah.
what is your X factor process?
So I'd say in my time, like as a director, and then in my time at Equinox too, I always had like a disdain for agencies, at least most
Mm,
agencies. And after leaving, coming back even to my own, I was like, this model's fucked. Like the system's not
yeah,
working how it should be. So we spent like the greater part of last year, like trying to figure out what actually works, the relationships we have that have become very valuable. Why did they? And I think for us, like we used to work in a model where we would do just like large campaigns or brand identity systems and things like that. The way in which we restructured everything now, we have a larger holding company. That holding company has our agency, which like you could say offers cult as a service. It has a venture studio within it, and it has a media distribution arm. And then across all of those, we built an advisory board of some of the top cult sociologists, linguistic professors, religion theorists, like other powerful advisors we've just become close with over the years, and then can kind of plug into those brands. So like
Wow.
I'd say one example recently to give a project we're working on right
Yeah, that'd
now,
be awesome.
which is like the first like deep cult project I would say is, are you familiar with Brian Johnson from Don't
Yeah,
Die?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So Brian and his co-founder Kate came to us and were like, "Hey, we want to build Don't Die into a movement, into a full-on religion."
yeah.
So we've worked with them now the past like 3 or 4 months on launching Don't Die as a religion through summits, through doctrine, through community leaders, and are very deep in that process right now, partnering with them
Mm.
on it.
It's such an interesting bridge from religion to brand. It's like
Yeah. No, it's
it's
something
wild.
so few people talk about. And
Yeah,
the
'cause
word
it kinda seems a little taboo to talk, but it's, like, true. It's like that's exactly what it is.
Well, when you
You're
think about it in the context of like the word cult has a ton of baggage to it.
Yeah, I
And
think that's why it feels like, "Oh, it's alright," like, people don't wanna talk about it, but
so they've rebranded cult, like, so a lot of professors and sociologists in the past decided to basically say new religious movement, NRM, instead of cult, because their argument was every single religious movement we know of today started off as a cult to some regards.
yeah,
So there's actively whatever it is, like 6 or 7 thousand NRMs in America at any given point. And you just think of that framework and apply it to brand.
yeah, and it's just interesting maybe and I don't know the history of the word cult outside of the obvious ones, but, like, it's I feel like cult has always been the word that the external parties use to represent that thing that they don't understand.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that it's almost like an external framework, like, that's a cult.
Yeah.
I was talking about this earlier too, like, I went to Hoffman, people like, my parents thought I was at a cult thing for, like, 7 days.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
and it's just interesting, but from the inside out, you don't feel the need to call it a cult. It's more of that movement, it's more inspirational, it's more of like an umbrella belief that you can all get behind, just on different scales, right? And that's yeah, it's such an interesting process that you guys run, but the way you talked about, like, that is an X factor to me, like, you're working with an agency, a service provider, a
Yeah.
partner like you, and a lot of what we do is think about this too, is how do you add these layers, these X factor layers to really come in and bolster the service you provide to the end client. And, even at Platform, we're trying to create an advisory board of amazing billionaire founders, like,
Yeah.
that's aspirational. These guys, our buddy Dan sold Ghost, our buddy Kurt sold Vital Protein. So it's all these over and over again. One or every one, I think probably every quarter or 2 quarters, we have one founder that exits for
Wow.
a pretty significant amount. And so, how do you bring those people in
Yeah.
to kind of help guide the playbook for new founders? But that type of access is really important. So the
It's
fact that you
leverage.
guys are bringing in like these experts from whether it's religion or whatever you had mentioned, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty unique.
But no, it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
I think you guys at Platform have done such a good job with that because
yeah,
even what you're saying, it's like having a unique identifier and having leverage. Like the goal where we are right now is to just not be a commodity.
mm,
I don't believe we're for everybody. And there's a bunch of brands that I don't think should ever hire me or
yeah,
ever work with us. And my whole point of view is like the few that do get it and really lean into that. I think the idea of trying to be for everybody is just, it's not worth it.
yeah.
How do you at Platform at least, how have you kind of evolved the model in which you've worked with brands over the last few years?
For platform, similar to you, commoditized business, historically, the reputation, just like agencies and a lot of things, like the lesser of two evils, you kind of have to outsource, you kind of have to work with someone to help
Yeah.
you do X, Y, Z things because you don't want to hire internally. I always use the lens of hospitality. I've just always been magnetized towards hospitality and the way they take care of people. And I think for us, our goal was how can we feel like we're a value add and incremental where a brand's excited to work with us and bring us on as a partner versus they need to,
Yeah.
right? They need a broker, which is like the archaic terminology in our industry is like a broker, but we feel like we're more of a concierge
Mm,
to the consumer versus a broker to the consumer. And that's how we've transitioned. Like saying you're a broker to the consumer is immediately very transactional, just like an agency would be, right? It's like, oh,
totally.
okay, we can do this work, pay us for
Yeah.
this work. We wipe our hands
And I can
clean.
sub you out with like 20 other companies in that space then,
Yeah,
if I think it'd be
and
three
just like
efforts.
you think about long term and kind of moving into our personal business side is when we think about longevity of a client or LTV, it's like there's the opportunity cost is so low to switch then. It's like, what else are you providing to this brand where they feel like you're emotionally invested in it, that you feel like you're always top of mind? I mean, I most of the founders I catch up with who are our clients, I catch up with them on weekends,
Yeah.
right? They're calling me like, hey, like, what do you think about this, or how should we think about this, or this just happened in the industry. Give us your thoughts. And when you can be that phone call where they're actually asking you for advice, and this advisory role, this hospitality role, this concierge role, I think then starts creating a new age of how you become a service provider in this era where things are so displaceable and so transactional. So, just like you, I think we're adding these multitudes of layers where people would usually have to go and find an advisor or go and find someone
Yeah.
in the religion space or
Yeah.
religious
You become a
space that are,
partner in that way.
yeah, you're like, hey, we know you're going to need these things. We're bringing them to the table for you. And I think that that is going to define some of the new age service partnerships. The era of just providing a transactional service. I mean, AI is going to do that,
Yeah. No, that's
right?
why I'm
I was
saying it's
all
commoditized.
like last night we were talking about at dinner. Just the way AI could have actually told me, and I didn't do it because I want to use my intuition, and that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Magnetism is about intuition and like connection. But there's ways to now be like, oh, based on Will's audience, like you should ask this question
Yeah. Or I can
because
use like deep research from
yeah,
ChatGPT and be like, hey, review every episode that Sauter's done through
yeah,
this and tell me what
I-
questions or what structure. Like,
yeah.
it's wild.
I was playing with that this morning.
Yeah.
It is just so crazy. And listen, there is give and take. I think some of it
Yeah.
really helpful. We're using AI at platform. Probably start integrating it here. Like it can be really helpful from blocking and tackling the shit that you just don't want to do and don't
Oh,
need to
yeah.
be spending time on.
I
But
mean, speed. That's like a matter of what it really gives you.
how does it impact the creative world?
I mean, for us, we don't ever use it really to generate creative per se as much, like thinking. We use it for research. So like we'll have it pull research for us. We'll have it pull data, and then right now, I mean, I started to notice like years ago, coming from like a background of like filmmaking, photography, things like that. Like I would highly doubt if most commercials are going to be filmed in a few years from now. Like a lot of my buddies are still shooting like car commercials, and a budget will be like $3 million to shoot a car driving down a street in downtown LA for like 2 days, and that's what they'll spend across crew,
Wow,
locations, all of that.
3 million bucks, you said?
About like
Yeah,
let's
because
call
they
it a
have to
million and a
block
half
off
to a
the
million bucks.
street. They gotta do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and also
all
like a
that.
DP's like 5 grand a day, prep days, travel days, director, like full crews, cranes, cameras, everything. That could be done by like honestly two kids with whether it's like Midjourney or
A
another AI tool,
fucking drone and
PK,
yeah.
anything else. It could be done in AI, like fully done in AI. So I think there's going to be a pretty big shift, and it's like controversial to say it
This
for
is
content.
yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I want to stick here. So
Yeah,
I just last night I was scrolling and I'm a fan of Porsche. I've always been.
likewise.
I think they've done some things which are now a little interesting. I haven't taken a full opinion on it. I'm just observing and kind of like digesting their content. It's very different than what it used to be.
Yeah.
There's one I pulled up yesterday, which was really interesting. It was they were trying to bring in three worlds together, and I'd love your opinion on this and whether it's a good tactic, what it's not. What are they thinking behind the scenes when they're creating something like this? But
Yeah.
it was their electric Porsche kind of racing through a solar field in Dubai
Okay.
with David Guetta playing EDM on top of the solar tower
Go on.
and just like fucking electric flashes and the car is racing in and out of solar panels and it's like obviously their whole theme I think with that side of their business is like electrify. um Even though it's interesting that they're getting a ton of hate on their electric cars and they're moving backwards in some cases,
Yeah.
but then you have this high production value video and maybe you tell me it's AI, it's not like costly, but it's
It's
you
probably
got you got to
costly.
look at it later. But
Yeah.
what when they think about that, do you think they were like, "Hey, we need to bring in like our core customer is an EDM customer who wants an electric car." How are they thinking about that? Because I that didn't really stick to me that when
No.
I watched it. It wasn't like a authentic. It felt like they were doing it for some sort of a reason
Yeah.
to check a box on something versus it being in their heritage. Because Porsche is a very heritage brand, and to see them do some of these things is just an interesting observation for me.
I think you're going to see a lot more of that from brands, if I had to guess. Like, there's a
Really.
lot of, I don't know about confusion, like lack of clarity as to where things are going for many legacy brands. Think of like the work Jaguar did that got them all the heat. Like they could have leaned into heritage and they moved completely away from it, and then all of the consumers were upset. I have like a vintage Porsche out in Los Angeles still, and like love the thing. And when I see that work, I'm like, it.
Yeah.
Even as you said, like David Guetta plays music from top of
Yeah.
the solar panels. I'm
And it's
like,
like,
oh,
why
it
even David
hurts.
get like the crazy part is that's a huge miss. David Guetta is just an umbrella
Yeah.
DJ now. He's not even a part of DJ culture anymore.
But the people making those decisions probably aren't aware of it. So it's like I've had it, it could come in many different ways. Like
That's
sometimes
so
the
crazy.
agency's ill-informed. Sometimes it can be like one of the executives is like, I love David Guetta. We're gonna work with David Guetta. And the agency just wanting to please them and keep the retainers, like, of course we will. And
Yeah.
then they write a 10, $20 million check to David Guetta.
Yeah.
So it's like there's many ways that happens that brands get painful campaigns. I haven't seen this,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
will say I see work like this almost every week now.
That is so crazy to me. And like what is like when you get a goal like I'm not in your world in terms of the service world, but is there an ROI attached to this? Are they saying, "Hey, this is if we get X amount of engagement from this, you know, cohort that we're aiming at with these electric cars and David Guetta, like, is that a win?" Is there or is it just brand marketing where they kind of are just saying, "Hey, we just want to create dope content and make it look sexy and put it up there."
It's a mixture. I feel like now for a company like Porsche, they have to have some quantifiable metric to everything they make. So there probably is something that some marketer there is saying like, "Oh, this worked because X, Y, and Z." Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm
That's
sure
so
they
crazy.
tried in some way, but like, you see what like Amelia Andore does with like Porsche, and that works far more exciting. Or like when other brands are collaborating with them, it's much more interesting from a brand lens than David
Yeah.
Guetta.
You work with clients and brands. How are you trying to keep a pulse on culture? So if, just if you were to make this commercial, like it doesn't have to be this example, but any brand in 2025, when you get a project like this, there's just so much shit going on. What are you pulling from?
Yeah, I'm usually pulling first from the actual community who purchased the product. So like spending a lot of time around like owners clubs, for
Mm,
example, for Porsche, going to like cars and coffee. Like I would,
talking to the consumer.
yeah,
Yeah.
like spending time with the consumer to actually understand what they're looking for in the purchase beyond just the item itself. So I'd say always starting there. When you go and you look at like macro culture as a whole and you're like, oh, I see these three shifts or these three
Mm,
trends, and I just attach our brand to that, it loses any sort of connection to being authentic to what the brand is. So I think that's to your point. Like people are trying to jump on trends really quickly, or they're trying to check a box, or they're like, our consumer is like this demographic plus this demographic, so that equals this type of work, and that falls short. It just lacks a strategy. So I think like a lot of people, I feel like tend to gloss over strategy for the work, and instead they try to copy whether it's visuals or content or something they see a competitor do. Whereas I think the best brands are ones that have a really firm point of view and will stick to that strategy over multiple years. Like
mm,
I would say Equinox always had a pretty firm strategy about what they were and what they weren't.
yeah.
And even if the entire industry called us crazy, we would stick with what that was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really consistent with what you said earlier, which is like when you can push through the timely trends or what's hot, the flash in the pan,
Yeah.
and you kind of pull out the other side with the same mentality that you started with prior to the trend starting, you have a way higher likelihood of just the test of time, right? Which is so critical to brands like Porsche and all these heritage brands.
Yeah. And I would say like you can do really provocative work and like let that be the top of your funnel, which like gets you to the next level of indoctrination and pulls you deeper into the brand. But as long as that's all
That's kind of
laddered,
like the don't die summit. I mean,
yeah,
it is so provocative, right?
yeah,
Like to just like the don't die summit.
exactly.
No one's done something like that,
No.
which is
And we were just at the one in Miami a few days ago and it was like completely sold out. Insane to be there and like witness the fanaticism that people have for Brian. Like how
yeah.
much they like worship what he
Is it like
says.
Tony Robbins vibe?
In some
I haven't been to
ways.
any of these.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's very interesting to watch people like attach as much identity and really follow a leader in that regards. And our goal now is like, okay, how do we scale that beyond Brian? So that's the big focus on what the work list and I've been doing with Brian and Kate recently is like, how does this, if it is a religion, how does it move beyond him? How does it like, how do we create priests and other leaders for it across different
So
sections?
wild.
Yeah.
So wild to
So
think about
all that's
that.
getting rolled out in the next few weeks. So
That's crazy. Um, I'm
yeah.
actually digesting in real time because I think it's so powerful to like I want to talk to our brands about some of this stuff because I think they're missing. And I don't think you have to go as far as maybe
No,
Brian's going, right? Because
no,
it's very unique to him
of
and
course.
authentic to him to be that polarizing and do his thing. And
Yeah.
like you said earlier, like some founders have a commitment and a North Star. Like yesterday I was talking to Margaret from Three Wishes cereal, a
Yeah.
smaller brand, just
Yep. I know them.
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing, and I don't think she's gonna start a "Don't Die" summit, but, with better cereal, but I think she has that indoctrination of, like, "Hey, I want my kids to be eating this. If I can vouch for my kids eating it, then other parents should as well," and it's, like, the North Star that she won't budge from,
Yeah. And that's, I think,
through
like
external pressures.
exactly, and, like, people will see that over time and, like, have loyalty for her unwavering ability to not compromise from that.
That is really critical, I think that's where the consumer starts building an invaluable amount of trust for
Yeah.
your brand when they've seen you say no to something that they felt like could have changed the course of the
Yeah.
brand.
You
Like
also, as a founder, have to live the brand. Like Brian, having spent a lot of time with him, I was like weirded out at first. Then we started hanging out a lot. And I'm like, oh, you really are the nicest person I've ever met, first off. But this is like this is your whole life. Like you live this, you love it. It brings you so much energy and joy. And
yeah,
like everything he preaches, he does to a T.
yeah, and he probably knows how to say no to the things that,
Oh, yeah.
are gonna drive him left and right
He's
where
built mental models and frameworks that allow him to like create this path and
yeah,
structures his life around that.
yeah. And I wonder if I'm just bringing it back to that
Yeah.
example, if they had said no to electric cars in the first place, given their heritage is so based on people obsessing about the combustion engine and all that, that would have been a test of unwavering loyalty to their customer.
It's tricky because it's like that's one that I'm not sure if I have an answer on. I think what I will say when you think of that through the lens of Porsche is it is luxury, and luxury in many ways is saying no to things that everyone
Mhm.
else is evolving to. So
Mm.
I would say when you think of like Porsche, Hermes, Patek Philippe, any other brand like that, it's usually saying no to something everyone else is doing or would make more sense from a business lens to
Mhm.
hold on to the heritage, unique know-how, scarcity, or any other principles that drive that.
Yeah. How are you educating yourself and continue to educate yourself on the industry? Because I think a lot of leaders that hopefully be listening to this podcast, and even for just selfishly myself, I feel like after years of being online on digital media, you kind of have some sort of baseline algorithm kind of feeding you, everything that you kind of talk about generally, which is
Totally.
wild to think about, but like that's what fuels most of your conversations, either real life conversations, which
Yeah,
I hope people have more of, or whatever you're seeing. And you can see that when you go to, your family get together, they're talking about the news headlines or whatever they've been fed that last week. How do you try to, as a creative specifically, how do you try to carve a path where you are continually being curious and educated? And this is more of a personal question, so
totally.
not more so for your business, but for you.
I feel like I mean I probably have two answers to that or two parts of it. In many ways, like I never went to like college or anything. I like left high school early. I like everything was self-taught, and it's all due to like some element of obsession. So like when I was like in my teens and I like want to be a filmmaker, I would like spend 8 to 10 hours a day after school just like watching videos online, understanding how people made things, going out with my friends, testing it, and like iterating in real time so I could get better. That just transitions to like brand or strategy or now religions. Like it's really just an obsessive like desire to know more about something. The second I would say is like in terms of like breaking the algorithm. For me, I started doing something very intentional a few years ago, where there's this like old Shinto Japanese purification ritual called a misogi,
Yeah.
and it was
Am I gonna get this at my haircut later?
exactly, and ultimately like
Yeah.
the idea that I attached to it was like it was a water cleansing ritual that you would do. And the modern version, in some ways, that people have taken from it is like doing one really hard thing every year and like something that makes the other 364 days easier. So, like, it was like 4 years ago or so, I started like, let me choose one really hard thing completely out of my comfort zone that has nothing to do with my career and like just dedicate a portion of my life for that year to training to do the thing.
Wow.
And my like qualification for it was like A, it had to be like dangerous. Like there had to be like a 50% chance of injury, but like less than a 5% chance of death. It had to bring me outside
Jesus. Yeah.
and it had to like put me around other people that I
Yeah.
probably don't work with. So like for example, like I love like I've always like grew up liking the idea of sailing and like wanted to get better at sailing and like I live in fucking New York City. I have no time. So I was like, okay, this year I'm gonna like race offshore yachts and like I'm gonna figure out how to do that. And I spent like basically a few months like DMing random professional sailors online. I befriended a team on the East Coast, started crewing with them, helped a team do a delivery across the Mediterranean, like worked my way up on bigger and bigger boats. And then by the end of the year, I did like a 600
No
something mile
way.
race. Yeah. Like
Really?
on a
That's
70-foot
inspiring. That's
offshore yacht.
awesome.
Yeah. So
And it
it's like
started from nothing.
completely. So it's like,
Yeah.
and then like that rinse and repeat of doing that over the course of a year, where you go from like basically being a novice
Is
in
there a
something.
50% chance of injury in sailing?
Oh, I mean,
That's
I
what
would say
I'm
the boats we were racing, man, it's like you do
Yeah.
like 5-day races, no sleep pretty much. You're working around the clock. You work in like 4-hour shifts. But the race we did last summer in Greece, a woman died on, bunch of people went overboard. More than half the boats either were demasked or retired.
So you went from not knowing anything about, like, never being on a s
I'd been
where
on like up to a 10-foot sailboat. So
yeah,
like
but
a
you
single
yeah, so
dinghy.
really a novice, yeah,
Yeah.
and then you went from that in a year,
Yeah. Of like running the agency, having jobs, traveling with
how did you get
clients.
time to do that?
Dude, I'd like be over in Spain shooting something or like working with a client, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna move my flight a day and go sail here." Or I'm like, "Oh, I have this like long
That is
weekend.
so
I'm gonna
awesome.
fly to Italy and like do a boat delivery with this team I met out of Austria."
What's a boat delivery?
For example, like if you have a race boat,
Yeah,
a lot of them don't have any autopilot or any like automatic
so you
controls.
have to bring it to the
So
next
like wherever the next race
destination.
is, you have to deliver that like 70, 100-foot boat by hand to that place. And normally when you
Is
race
this
the
like
boats,
Sail GP? Is that
no, I don't
similar?
do that. That stuff's wild.
Yeah, that's
That's
like
like,
F1
yeah,
type
that's like
shit,
Formula
right?
One. I
Okay.
do the like, you're gonna cry. We're doing a race this summer that's like
Yeah,
a transatlantic. So
okay.
from Newport to Ireland, pretty much. So like 10 days roughly on the boat we'll be on. And
No
like,
shit.
there's no like, it's about 14-person crew on the boat. It's just like a slick deck, little carbon fiber cots, and then like a tiny camping stove and some water. And that's the whole boat.
You're gonna do that for 10 days
Yeah.
from Newport to Ireland.
Yeah. Be miserable.
Yeah. Jeez, dude.
Yeah.
They got you in that cult deep.
Oh, yeah. No, that's it, man. That's
You're
but
in
again,
that
it's
cult
like
deep,
to
dude.
your point of like how do you
Yeah.
like break the algorithm? It's like doing shit
But
like that.
that I actually love this example because this is the type of stuff that I wanna amplify for other people as well as like, you are gonna learn so much on that.
Oh
Not
yeah.
only about yourself, but around just unique abilities to take stories and then or mini situations that happen amongst those 10 days and then integrate that into your work.
Yeah.
Like, that
It's
that is
amazing.
so special.
Yeah, and then it's just like the people you meet too are like from completely different industries. And like I remember a conversation we had at like 2 in the morning on the boat in the middle of a storm, like literally sparked the latest business venture we're doing for like one of the startups we're building. So it's like
Wow.
things like that are always where we find inspiration.
So that was last year. Are you continuing to do that this year then? Is that your challenge this
Yeah,
year?
I mean, I like
Yeah.
put it I like crowdsourced from friends, like, what should I do next year? And it was like, I think where we're landing for next year was probably like like the Baja Enduro race on a motorcycle. Like I haven't ridden a motorcycle in like 10 years. I don't know. So
Wow.
might do a big desert off-road race.
It's a lot of
So
action stuff. It's probably coming back from your days of skateboarding.
yeah, it
Just
needs to
getting
like
back into
require some form of like suffering, sleep deprivation, pain, all of that. That's just how I'm wired. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I need
You've
physical
been spending a
suffering.
lot of time with the Don't Die Summit, that's for
Dude,
sure.
seriously. But no,
Shit.
there's actually it's funny,
Yeah.
my wife discovered this recently, and she's like, "Oh, you like type 2 fun." And I was like, "What's type 2
Fuck, is type
fun?"
2 fun?
That's what I was like. She's like, "Oh, it's
Sounds like
things
a
that are miserable."
Tassie, yeah. Jeez.
It's things that are miserable in the moment and enjoyable afterwards. So it's like I realized all the things
It's the
I
most I've heard a saying called, it's like when people pledge for a fraternity, it's the most fun you never wanna have again.
exactly. Yeah.
That's the way I've
Yeah.
heard people put it.
Yeah, man. So I think we all crave initiation in some regards and
Yeah.
like some form of testing yourself. So
Wow. That
this
that
is
is
why.
actually really cool, man.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
that's something I'll take away from today for sure. Is that and then you kind of just bucket that as an experience, and do you think you'll continue to sail, or do you not pull it along further years?
Some years I like leave it behind. Sailing for me, like after
Yeah,
discovering, I'm like, I would do that for the rest of my life if I could.
yeah,
So at some point, hopefully, I'll like have a boat I can go spend half the year on,
yeah.
and go race or go do whatever. But that'll be one thing I do for a long time.
How do
So
you leave room for your wife? And I'm selfishly asking,
no,
like,
I'm the one thing
how do you
that
do all this and
the advice I give
still
to very few people is most people who come to me and they're like, should I start an agency or a company with my wife? I'm usually like, no. For her and I, it works amazing.
yeah, I'm sure the
So
personality fits.
yeah, I would say that we travel a
I
lot.
think I
Like
met her at that shoot where we first met.
yeah,
She was
yeah.
there with
Alyssa,
the
yeah.
dog?
Exactly, the
Yeah,
dog. Yep,
yes,
cowboy.
okay. Yeah, I didn't get
So,
to talk to her, but yeah,
yeah, man.
awesome.
Her and I just we spend a lot of time together through work, and then we always like carve times together to go do other things or go travel and like go take trips. So that, but she also knows that if I don't get to go do the crazy weird sailing thing, like my brain's wired where I'll just like not be fun to be around.
Yeah, it's
So,
special that you guys support each other in that. I think that's also a lesson that is important is like making sure both of your cups are full.
oh, entirely.
So otherwise, when you come together, you're going to be
How do you and your wife do it? Out of
same
curiosity.
same thing. I think it
Yeah.
was literally what you mentioned at that last point is is something that Paige and I take to heart and hold very sacred in our relationship, which is really trying our best not to sacrifice our own cup for the other. And I
Yeah,
think that was a learning lesson. Like we through having our son, through career shifts, through, a lot of relationship challenges and just beautiful stuff looking back, we've really challenged ourselves to finally come to this point where we really empower the other to go and do whatever it takes to fill their cup. Like I don't want to, you know, get in the way of anything that on her deathbed she'll be like, I wish I spent more time exploring a city.
totally.
I wish I spent more time being at home with her son. I wish I spent more time pursuing my artistry career. She's a makeup artist. And
Obviously.
so it is easy to say. I think these things are easy to say in a conversation like this, but when you put it into action, it means a ton. And so, like, even while I'm here, like, she's my biggest cheerleader. She's at home, pregnant, watching her son, and at the same time, like, posting videos supporting me doing this type of stuff. So I
That's
think
amazing,
that
man.
that type of stuff goes a long way in a relationship. And I think it's the ones where you have to come home and ask the other person to fill your cup, where there starts being expectations that
Yeah.
because we've been through that.
Oh, yeah,
We've
we
been
all
through
have.
times where
Totally.
I've expected things from her when I got home
Yeah.
because I spent a day not being fulfilled maybe.
Yeah, and then you take it out on your partner
Yeah,
and look for it in
yeah.
that, and yeah.
And that type of stuff. I mean, you have to be committed to, and it sounds like you probably are given all the stuff you do, but self-growth.
Oh, yeah,
And that's an
you have to
important
be.
part of the conversations I have too. And that's why I was kind of diving into some of the things you're doing. But the self-growth journey, I think, fuels all the professionalism in the relationships and all of that as well. Because if you don't have that, you're stagnant, right? And
Entirely.
I think you mentioned it as like initiation and
Yeah.
initiative and all of this. Like that is such a fundamental aspect of self-growth.
We crave transformation, we crave progress, and it's like, if you remove that level of meaning from a human, you get a pretty sad human. And
Yes,
that's, I think, to bring it to the circle of, like, I am worried as we start to automate a lot of, like, jobs in Western society, our identity is usually our job. So it's like, as that gets taken
absolutely.
away in some places, where are people gonna find identity?
Yeah, and that's
Um,
what Jonathan Leary and I were talking about this morning at his social club.
yeah.
That's honestly what I took away from our coffee this morning was, yeah, there's people are very lonely. The connection that he is trying to embody and instill and support in his social clubs without the drinking and
Mhm.
without the getting fucked up and all that, I think is really special.
Yeah. And like we've been blessed to like be close with John, close with this guy Robbie who owns a thing called Othership from Toronto.
Yeah, I've heard
They,
about someone recommended Othership too.
yeah, you should check it out. They're
Yeah.
awesome. But they do a great job at like Robbie got sober and was like, I want to build the community connection that used to happen in bars in a healthier environment. And my friend Ryan owns a thing called Open Meditation Breathwork
Oh,
app.
love open.
Love Open. Exactly. Amazing. So I think things
Yeah.
like that, you're going to see more of these businesses pop up that spark community and connection around things that probably aren't related to like going out and drinking
Yeah.
heavily.
How do you cultivate that other side of you? Because you mentioned a lot of things that are high performance.
Yeah.
It sounds like you work with a lot of high performance brands too, which is awesome. How do you sort of support the other side for you, which is more of the grounded side, time for yourself, not sailing 10 days from Newport to Ireland?
Yeah.
Or do you even take time to do any of those things that you mentioned breath work and some of those aspects?
Yeah, I do. Never as much as I should.
Yeah.
What like years of therapy have taught me is like I try to make everything black or white. Like I'm this or this. And I think I've learned that you have to exist in the gray in between and like be okay with that like discomfort in between each end.
Mm,
So even like with me when I was like a director or creative, I was never fulfilled because there wasn't a business component. And then when I went like fully in the business for a while, I wasn't fulfilled because the creative component wasn't there. So I think it's like kind of architecting and engineering your life in a way that builds a sort of system that allows you to like play into both of those things. So, like I
mm,
love being alone. I'm in New York City in Soho. Like I walk outside my door, there's like a million tourists. It's crazy. I just like I have a car here. I just leave, and we'll just like go drive somewhere, figure out a hotel when I get someplace,
yeah,
and that's it. So like I have to create,
that balance.
yeah, I have to like create a kind of a boundary of like leaving a space and going into another space.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because even professionally, I operate that way too, where a week of just having conversations
Yeah,
like this, I'll come back way more inspired than if I was just at my desk
that's how I am. Every time I go
for
on a
for a
trip,
week.
yeah, and it's like I'm very kind of like my wife and I both say like we're kind of for like work life unbalanced. Like we like the idea of like let's go work like crazy for like 2, 3
I mean, that's
weeks.
that's a next that's a cult idea.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
There we
There
go.
we
I'm gonna
go.
trademark when I get home.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like we'll go work 2, 3 weeks and like not sleep and then like get through with that and like go take a few days to fully recover and recharge. And it's like rather than like a very set routine that we do every day, we'll like become obsessive about something, see a ton of progress and execution in that, and then like reset and recharge and go back at it.
Playing off of that, where does designing your future life look like? Like, what is the dream state here, given everything you've worked? I mean, you've worked on so much, so many cultural relevant brands. Sounds like a lot of disruptive cult-led brands now.
Yeah.
Are you kind of just going with the tides as they come along, or is there a vision for you in the next 5 to 10 years
No, man.
of
I'm like maniacally obsessive about vision and things like that. So, growing up, this is like a weird side tangent to get back to the point, but like my dad was an AA. I grew up going to AA meetings with him, and like every morning he would be like reading like 12 steps or kind of a book from
wow,
AA. And I like kind of thought of that as I hit through my 20s. I was like, I should build like my own little like book like that is full of the things I'm trying to actually do to stick to the path I want to be on. So I have like every morning like a book I'll reflect on that I've like written myself and printed that has like the path I'm trying to go on, like
it's
principles.
like your own Bible.
Yeah, basically.
Wow,
Like
it's
decision
powerful.
matrix, like all of that work. So I think in terms of that relationship, it's where we want to go is one in terms of taking a lot of risk, building things with people we love, and like participating in the upside when they become successful.
Mm,
So it's really just a space of like, I love working with some of the world's best brands. It's also great because you can see the challenges they're going through, that they're probably too slow to fix quickly. And then can you basically build solutions to them that you can sell back to them?
yeah.
So it allows us to build an incredible distribution network and advisory board of some of the smartest people in business while also giving us the upside to go build things from scratch with people we like and take a lot of risk.
And
So
that sounds like that'll be ever changing as the brand industry evolves.
yeah.
But having this like playbook for yourself,
Yeah.
or this like Bible or mantras for yourself, does that change over time, or has
Oh
that
yeah.
been solid?
No, I
That book
like
that
constantly
oh
change
you
it. I'll
do?
like print new versions all the time.
Oh,
Like it's been
interesting.
like a living and
Yeah.
breathing document for like years. So like I'll just like continually make
Is it
notes
is
in
it
it.
more quantitative or qualitative?
I'd say qualitative. Like I tried doing the quantitative thing for a long
Like
time of
what? Like I
like
need X.
I need this
Yeah.
much money by this time, and then I'd like hit that much money by that time, and then the number would actually be up here.
So
And
you
it just
close to
like
chase.
it always changed. So now
Yeah.
it's more qualitative in terms of like relationships, friends,
Give me
how I
can
spend
you
my
give me an
time.
example or one or two of like what that feeling is?
Oh my God, I'm trying to think right now. I would say like it's broken down into a few sections, but like very simple stuff like daily affirmations, but then also like frameworks and questions to ask yourself every day. Like, am I actually focusing on what matters most?
Mm.
One thing I read years ago that I carry with me is like having a one thing for every day. So like before, like when I go to bed at night, I'll figure out tomorrow what the one thing is that I need to accomplish to get closer to where I want to be. Because if I don't, like I wake up, I immediately have 100 emails. I'm like,
There's no the North Star gets
dude, I
lost.
blink and it's like midnight. So I'd say that's to me like the thing that's allowed for the most progress while still maintaining like a profitable cash flowing agency is having like one thing that moves you closer to where you want to be every day.
And it's probably fulfilling because
Oh
you know
yeah.
it's something that you set out, not that the world gave you during that day.
Yeah. But like for me, it's like I don't know about you, but like if I like blink, wake up and realize for the last month I was just reactive and I didn't actually move closer or like live the life I want to live, I
And you
I don't
build
feel good.
resentment
Oh
for that
yeah.
year or for the yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
So it's like for me, it's just to be a better human being, I have to be making progress closer to where I want to be.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And we can kind of segue into probably the last and where I find the most help for other listeners and brands and founders. And again, I would hope that the magnetic community, maybe I got to think about more cult
Let's do
driven
it, man.
belief systems to get people. But
You
it's
got
funny,
to,
I
dude.
talk about magnet. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that is what a cult has.
Oh yeah.
It's this crazy
It's a
gravitational
mad
force. Like, we got to join, we got to
desire.
be a part of it.
Yeah,
Like, it's
like you
this
have to
desire.
switch. You don't want to be selling
What,
people. You want people to beg to join.
yeah. What are those characteristics or your advice or just your expert thoughts given the experiences you've had around building these types of brands or helping them around things to focus on if you are trying to build it for the first time? um, how can you start thinking about that framework of what are those desires, what are the things that I can implement to be more cult like?
I would say make sure whatever you're building is deeply rooted in like a problem that you're trying to solve for yourself. Because if you don't relate to it, it just doesn't work, in
It's
my
not going to
opinion.
go through the product,
It
it's not
doesn't
going to
resonate.
embody in
No.
whatever you do.
It'll feel like a cash grab or it'll just be transactional. I would say like starting with a doctrine or like your grounding principles, whether it's commandments, it's like your myth, your ideology, just something that is some form of documentation that you have that like is your North Star that everything points back to, your reason for existing, why people would join or belong. There's a paradox with cults that people join cults to conform, where people actually join cults to feel more like themselves. They're like, oh,
Mm.
this
That's an
community, yeah,
interesting
like
perspective.
this community accepts me for who I am, and they make you feel like you as an individual are
Or
valuable.
heard and seen, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like always keeping that in mind and thinking about how can you create a space that allows others to go through that moment. Uh, I would also just say like there's a lot of basic things like us versus them framing. So like how can you kind of set it up where it's you versus the industry or you versus like this larger space. Equinox, we would always we'd never use the word gym. We refused to refer to Equinox as a gym. It was a club. And just through that
I
lens,
didn't even realize that, but
yeah.
it's so omnipresent now.
Oh yeah, yeah. You'll never see the word gym in any of Equinox's materials. We did a very controversial campaign like 2 years ago, where on January 1st we banned new signups because we were like, if every gym advertises on January
This
1st,
shit is so interesting, like, that is awesome.
yeah.
I think that's so
Oh,
cool
thanks, man.
and unique, yeah.
But it's like that. It pissed so many people off, but it was like exactly what we wanted to do because like Harvey kept always talking about like, okay, we're not a gym, but then every year Equinox put out a campaign on January 1st, the same day Planet Fitness took over Times Square.
You're saying you're not something, but you're doing exactly what the others are doing.
Totally. So then I was
That's not gonna
yeah.
translate well into wow,
So
yeah,
then like create a brand action, like put it on the line and be like, we're not accepting signups today. And this is why. So I think
wow.
like if you can build a brand that takes actual action that doesn't just speak, but like does what it says it will do, that's an incredible way to go. And then like a lot of cults have unique language. So if you think of CrossFit, like having unique terminology like the box or like building a shared language that is a shorthand for members.
Mm.
Um, a lot of runners do this. Like I think those are things that
It's
make you
almost like
feel
when you think about Gen Z or, like, any they have, like, Riz and all these just making
it's
that shit,
true, dude.
but it's true. It's like you feel like you're not a part of them,
No, exactly.
and
Yeah.
like, they've made their,
And you're excluded.
generation a cult.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's like
Yeah,
many brands are getting back to like a very delicate balance of like gatekeeping off knowledge and like kind of access or information in some
yeah,
ways. So it's like you have to like work a little hard to get access. You have to try like we remove friction from the experience for so long. And so much of what I love doing is like adding friction in certain points. Like
mm.
don't just let people buy it, make people apply for it. Like all of these little tricks that you can make people feel like once they've gotten in, they've earned their spot or they've earned their ability to access this and then they're loyal to it and it becomes part of their
It's like a
identity.
members club.
Yeah. And that's why everything's a membership club now. Restaurant I go eat food at's a membership club.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's another conversation.
Yeah, it's another conversation. An
Yeah.
interesting one. There's a lot of cool things going on in that space that
Yeah,
I think some will stick, some won't, but
totally.
yeah, last question for you.
Okay.
On a grand scale, do you think the more fragmented we get into these communities and silos, because to your point, I think it was just a simple 4 or 5 big ones back in the day where it's like
Mhm.
religion, your school program,
Yeah.
your Boy Scouts, whatever, like you can only be a part of 4 or 5, whatever. And they were big, right? Like if you're a Christian, you're big, Hindu, big, like big cults,
Yeah.
or groups or communities. They're so fragmented now.
Yeah.
There's so many that we talked about generational people. We talked about, oh, you're behind a beauty brand. You're with the Don't Die Summit.
Yeah.
There's moms groups. There's this, there's that. There's so many individual identifiers for all of these communities. Do you think this is good for humanity? Like, is this going to cause less connection between broader sets, or do you think it's fine just having more connection within smaller pockets?
It's a great question. I would say like we've witnessed like in many ways the death of the monoculture. Like when there was like one show we'd all watch, whether it was like Lost or something back in the day,
Mm,
everyone could relate over that. Now you probably have that less and less because I'm on like some obscure YouTube rabbit hole and like I'm like it's 3 in the morning. I'm
yeah,
like trying to find out about this one weird thing. I still think like monoculture breaks through, whether it's like Severance.
monoculture. Yeah, where you all just got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I would say too like I don't need like 10,000, a million friends. I need like 5 or 6 good people. So it's like if
Mm,
I find a community of people who really get me, even if it's not part of a large organized group and it's a smaller niche, as long as they accept me for who I am and I have like a genuine human connection with them, it's going to make me happier than the other. So I would say there's probably negatives that are going to come from this, whether we're more segmented now than ever. But I'm not sure. I think as long as we're able to really nail the human relationships
mhm.
and the core human needs, that's going to be what matters most.
I actually really agree with you. I think if you think about back in the old days or
Yeah.
ancestral times, I mean, you could only know your village.
Yeah.
You could only know the 10, 20 people. And Hoffman to me is still so powerful, and that's why I mention it a lot. But something that I learned was that you were with 40 people. I could have truly, if I take out all the other things in my life, you could have lived with those 40 people for
Yeah.
the rest of your life because you connected so well.
Yeah. Well,
And you didn't
that's
really
true.
need the outside world. And you are gone from you realize a week later you come back into reality because you don't have your phone, you don't have any digital stuff. None of the news for that week mattered.
No, not at all.
Like, there was a comedian that joked about it recently on Netflix. He was just like, when something like, unfortunately, like a 9/11 or something happens, everyone will find
Yep.
out to a certain degree when you
Yep.
need to know. It'll hit you. But these like smaller, like headlines, whatever they are today, I don't even follow most of them, but they're in and out, gone in a flash. And
Yeah.
I think there's just fake ways to try to have like mono news across monoculture news.
It's become like attention has become a commodity.
Yeah.
Like, and that's I think what's interesting is like attention is now a luxury good. There was an author, I think it's The World Beyond Your Head is the name of the book. He speaks a lot about like when you walk through an airport, everything you see is like screens, advertisements, signs, etc. And then you pay money, you go into a lounge, and it's silence. It's void of advertising, and it's just like this room, simplicity. So I think like in the future, we've unfortunately as a society
Oh, that's a
commoditized
cool analogy.
attention. Yeah,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
you'll have to pay if you want to exist within society and get your attention back, you'll have to pay a premium or you'll have to
Ah,
remove yourself from the society.
that's really interesting.
So
It's a really
that's
good metaphor.
yeah, it's I'm not sure where we're headed in all of that, but I would say like everything old is new again. And I do think we'll start to live in simpler times where we go back to things that were fundamentally human.
Mm.
As AI replaces a lot of the superficial roles we had, the only things I would bet on right now from a business perspective are core human needs and desires.
I love that. And that's a very optimistic and positive note to end on. I appreciate you being here,
Likewise,
Will.
man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you
This
having
was
me.
amazing, bro.
Dude, thank you, dude.
This was great, man. Seriously, this was really great.